Brother David is a sickle cell warrior, and he is also a medical doctor by profession. So I'm just going to invite him now. Okay. Fabulous. So I will go ahead and introduce our guest today. Okay, so Brother David, welcome to everybody watching. Welcome to you, Dr. David Owoeye. He is a fellow sickle cell warrior. He has sickle cell anemia. He's a born-again Christian. He's a husband to his beautiful wife and father of 2 handsome boys. He's a prolific award-winning writer. He's a medical doctor. His specialty is infection prevention and control, and he's been he's been a general medical practitioner for over 8 years. He's also had previous work experience within health insurance as well. His current position now, he's based in Saudi Arabia. So his current position is the Regional Coordinator of the Surveillance Program, General Directorate of Infection Prevention and Control in Jazan, Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia. So welcome, Brother David. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us today. You know how long it's been that we've been waiting for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Let me give you, I think I need to give you share screen.
Okay.
In fact, I believe you can actually share your screen.
Let me see, share screen, okay. Okay.
Yes, fantastic.
So, okay, let me expand this properly. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. From which country in the world you watch viewing us, maybe afternoon, maybe morning, maybe evening. So which applies to you. Thank you for your opportunity to be able to share from your experience, my experience, our experience, to encourage one another and then to inspire hope in one another, to make us understand that we're not alone in this fight. I want to take much of our time because of what we're going to do. So I want to just give a brief information medically about sickle cell, which are part of them is in my book, and then dwell more on the experiences of sickle cell crisis, sickle cell complications, and then how to manage it. Now, the first thing is, what is sickle cell disorder? It is a genetic blood disorder, also referred to as hemoglobinopathy. It is inherited by birth and expressed based on the mutated or unmutated gene the child inherits from both parents. So the problem is not with the child in terms of how he or she acquired it. It's rather with the parent. Now, it doesn't mean we are trying to throw blames at anybody, but to be able to understand it properly, it's not like malaria infection, it's not like chest infection, it's not transmissible by a bite from a mosquito or by germ. It is a non-communicable disease that someone will acquire when parents have sex together and give back to a child. In other words, either one or both parents have to have either sickle cell trait or sickle cell anemia, or one could have sickle cell trait, another could have sickle cell anemia. As we go on with the presentation, there is a diagram that will help us to understand it better. So medically, it is an autosomal recessive disorder. The problem is basically with the structure of the red blood cell. We can see the red blood cell there. The normal structure of the red blood cell, the ones that are not sickled, is biconcave. But when it goes through certain factors that can trigger crisis, it makes it sickled. So let's just go on. What are the variants of sickle cell disorder? Now, sickle cell disorder can be diagnosed by hemoglobin electrophoresis or high performance liquid chromatography. Now, let me dwell more on this variant, the different variants of sickle cell disorder. The sickle cell trait, which is AS, AC. Some other ones could also apply because science is helping us to understand more about it. There's sickle cell disease, which is sickle cell SC and sickle cell SS. I have sickle cell SS. It is said that sickle cell SS is worse than SC. Then there's also beta thalassemia trait plus sickle cell disease. Beta thalassemia is another type of blood disorder, just like sickle cell, also in the class of what we call hemoglobinopathies. So the problem there is with the beta thalassemia trait and with sickle cell disorder. And then there's also beta thalassemia disease and sickle cell disorder. Then there are also rare forms like D. Punjab, O. Arab, and E, and many others, many others. Science is helping us to understand. So it's just for us to have a brief a brief introduction on what it is, the different disorders or variants under sickle cell disorder. So for most of us on the group, we are more on the sickle cell traits. Quickly, I will say here that while I was growing up, I never got to hear that people with sickle cell traits do have sickle cell crisis, sickle cell complications. Because my mom is sickle cell trait, my father is sickle cell trait. I never witnessed them having those and crisis of complications. But when I met our sisters, Sister Mila, and she started sharing, she was like, she's sickle cell trait, and that she's been having some of these crises. I was like, that's not possible that she should go for testing again. Maybe she's sickle cell disorder. And she told me, no, she's sickle cell trait. So my coming in contact with her made me understand and change my perspective that, oh, even people with sickle cell traits also could have sickle cell crisis and complications. And I think it is important the medical community research on it, because basically from my understanding, the medical field, medical community does not have so much about sickle cell trait having crisis and complications. And so that is why most of the time, if you go to a doctor and you tell them it's sickle cell trait and they're having crisis, they find it difficult to believe you, because there's nothing in our textbooks that says that sickle cell trait, except they start writing it now. And I believe our speaking out as people with sickle cell trait will help us to be able to get the attention of the medical community and encourage research into it. So classification of sickle cell disease based on the beta hemoglobin haplotypes. Now, I want to dwell so much on this. I'm going to leave this slide with our sister so she could share it, so I can concentrate on the more important aspect. Everything is important, but the more important aspect for this topic, for this platform. So let me take us quickly to the history of sickle cell disorder. Unscientifically, in other words, there is not so much, traditionally, not by science. Now, 1670, there was a Ghanaian family that it was detected, but then there was not much that could be used to detect whether it is sickle cell. So it's like tracing it back to history. In 1870, there was an African medical literature that cited that Owoeye, for most of South Africa, do you understand what is called Owoeye? Okay, from my tribe in Nigeria, Owoeye is used to describe somebody, is okay, like a scenario like this. A family, a father, a man, and a woman have a child, give birth to a child, the child dies, and then another child comes back. They believe that the child that comes back after the death of that one is like a repetition of that one, that is refusing to die. So they tag that child like Owoeye. So now, North African medical literature is trying to make us understand if there's a probability that most of those deaths, because there was no adequate care, there was no medical information to whether they were sickle cell. And there's it understanding that sickle cell, most of them don't live up to 5 or 10 years in those days because of the frequent crisis and no better way to manage it. So they just die. So you give birth to this child, and so probably if a father had a sickle cell trait, a mother had a sickle cell trait, or one of them had the disorder and another one the trait, marries and they give birth to a child. The first child is sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disorder or sickle cell, whatever, the child dies. And then the second one also, because they are both contributing the S gene or the C gene or whichever. So another child, they give birth to another child, that child also dies. So they keep saying that, oh, when another one comes after the death of that one, it's like the first one is refusing to die. So it's called it like Owoeye, and they don't live long. That is one of the things they try to describe. So African medical literature was like, there's a possibility that what we were dealing with then that we didn't know could be sickle cell disorder. Now, scientifically, in 1904, Walter Clement Noel, a young Black man from the Grenada Island, was studying dentistry in the Chicago University, Chicago Presbyterian, and he was admitted, he was studying dentistry there and he was admitted to the Chicago Presbyterian Hospital. And then some investigations were done, and they detected from his blood under a microscope, according to medical literature, that there were crescent-shaped red blood cells. Because from what they've been able to see from different blood cells, they've never seen anything like crescent-shaped until they admitted him and then examined his own blood and found crescent-shaped red blood cell. So in 1910, Dr. James Eric, who was in charge of his management, published about it in the archives of internal medicine. I initially called it Eric's anemia because he was the one that was able to cite it. But the first person they detected in it scientifically was a black Negro, Walter Clement Noel, in 1904. So later on, from other work, there are a lot of metamorphoses to be able to appreciate that it should be called sickle cell anemia and understand more about it. So what is the problem in sickle cell disorder? Hemoglobinopathy. Hemoglobin is the problem. Hemoglobin is in the red blood cells. It is the oxygen carrying component of the red blood cell. So there is the hemoglobin is broken down into the heme part and the globin type. The heme part is the iron. Now, when there is breakdown of red blood cell, what happens is that the hemoglobin also breaks down. And then when heme is also breaking down, iron is released. But the iron is not flushed away from the system. It's stored back into the body. That's why it is advised that those who have sickle cell disorder should not use iron-containing hematinics or blood drugs, because there is tendency to have an iron overload. When the red blood cell is broken down, the iron that is released freely into the bloodstream is not excreted. It is stored back into the body. So that is where the concept of being cautious in using hematinics that contain iron. Now, globin has two chains, the alpha and the beta chain. The defect lies in the beta chain. Amino acids are abnormally replaced. Now, amino acids are used to form these chains. The basic elements of protein is amino acids. So whenever you're taking in protein, be it beans or whatever, or any meal that contains protein, the basic unit of it is amino acid. So now the formation of the globin is such that alpha chain, beta chain comes together, two pairs of each, a pair and a pair of alpha chain, a pair of a beta chain, but each of them are produced differently. So the amino acid that is produced to form the beta chain have abnormally replaced on the cis position of the beta chain. Now the beta chain has different positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on the particular cis position, that is where a genetic mutation occurs, whereby a particular amino acid is abnormally replacing another type of amino acid. And then for sickle cell hemoglobin S, it is glutamine that is replacing valine. For sickle cell C, it is lysine with valine. So it differs by different variants of sickle cell. Under certain conditions, these abnormal red blood cells, when the globulin is formed abnormally, the hemoglobin is also formed abnormally, and then the red blood cell is abnormal. So these abnormal red blood cells, under certain conditions, become sickled. And once they are sickled, they occlude the blood vessels, they block the blood vessels to prevent movement and delivery of nutrients, including oxygen. And once there is this blockage, that is where the pain crisis arises from, because some metabolites that should be excreted, some chemicals that are referred to as metabolites that should be excreted either from the kidney or from the feces, are now accumulated because they cannot pass through the blood vessel to get to the kidney or other organs where they be excreted. So once they accumulate, they sensitize the pain nerves. There are nerves in the body called pain nerves. So once they sensitize the pain nerves, start having pains. So once there is so much of them because of the accumulation, when the red blood cell is blocks the blood vessel, more of these metabolites will accumulate, and then they start sensitizing, stimulating different pain cells. So depending on where it happens, whether it's the leg, the back, that is where you start having the different pains. So, okay, so this is what I want to talk about. How is sickle cell disorder inherited? I want us to look at the diagram properly. Now, on the upper left, there is the father, which is T means the trait, and then N means normal, and SC means sickle cell. So on the upper left, there is a father and the mother. The father is a trait, the mother is a normal. So when they have intercourse and they give birth to children, their offspring, this is how it follows: trait, normal. Now I want to state this. This is how it is. See, it is probability. for each pregnancy, not for the 4 pregnancy. For each pregnancy, there is a probability that 25% or 50%, because we have TT. So if you are going to combine the 4 together to equate to 100%, 2 equate to 50%. So there is a probability that 50% of each pregnancy will be sickle cell trait, and 50% of each pregnancy will be normal, not sickle cell. Now, this is what it means. Each pregnancy. So assuming a family have 3 offspring, for each pregnancy, the first pregnancy, there is a probability. 50% trait, 50% normal. Second pregnancy, there's a probability. So for some, they could be lucky that all the children, offspring will be normal. For others, they could be lucky that all could be the trait. And then when we go on, we see that for some, it could also be unlucky that all the children, a father and a mother have 4 children, and all of them are sickle cell anemia. Because the abnormality works on each pregnancy, not on 4 offspring, such that, if once this one is AS, once this one is trait, this one must be trait, and the other 2 should be normal. No. It's for each pregnancy. So you are using a probability of 50%, 50%, using the upper right, trait and normal. Now, for the father, for the upper right, we have trait, father and then mother. For most of us on this group who are sickle cell free, the upper right applies to us. That's where you most of the time find just trait. Now, it's possible you have trait in a family that have also sickle cell anemia or this. So on the upper right, we have father that's sickle cell trait, we have mother that's sickle cell trait. So for each pregnancy, there's a 50% chance that they could have a sickle cell trait. For each pregnancy, there's a 25% chance that they could have sickle cell disorder, sickle cell anemia. And for each pregnancy, there is a 25% chance that they could be normal, AA. Now, from the lower left, you see sickle cell, father, mother, normal. So for each pregnancy, each one of them should be sickle cell trait, because the father is contributing only the S, while the mother is contributing only the A. So each pregnancy will be AS, which is just a trait. And then for the lower right, we have the sickle cell father and then the mother trait. So for this one, it will be each pregnancy 50% that it could be trait, and then each pregnancy 50% that it could be sickle cell anemia. Advisably, if you're going to get married, it's either the upper right, the upper left, or the lower left that is advisable, that can only produce normal and trait, but it's advisable don't produce sickle cell anemia, because that's where the main problem is. But now that we are knowing that even sickle cell traits also have crises and complications, I think we should start reinventing it medically, that let us also see how we could stop production of giving birth to children with sickle cell trait. So I hope you understand this diagram properly. So you could see that it is nothing about the child, it is about the parents. So if the father and mother are complaining about the child, it's not the child's fault. And that doesn't mean we are throwing blame, but to be factual, it is not the fault of the child, because the child was not there when both of you got married. It was what you did, maybe because you were not exposed to the adequate information then, that resulted to the condition the child found in herself. So you should be more caring to the child, because it is not his or her fault. And when you're trying to put the blame on the child, it could be traumatic. It could be a form of mental stress. And mental stress can also trigger pain crisis and other crises in sickle cell, people with sickle cell disorder. Okay, so triggers of sickle cell crisis. There is stress. Whenever you are exposed to any form of stress, either physical or mental stress. So when you are engaged in any form of manual work and it becomes unbearable for your body, it can trigger a crisis. Also, infection or infestation by bacteria, by viral, by parasite, any form of them can trigger a crisis. That is why it's advisable that people with sickle cell disorder, sickle cell warriors, to ensure they take all their immunizations to prevent infection. And then basic hygiene is encouraged, proper hygiene, so that they are not exposed or they do not acquire infection, which can trigger a crisis. Dehydration, that low or reduced body fluid. That's why it's advisable to always take a lot of water, because once they are dehydrated, it will cause the red blood cells to be sickled. The mutation, the cascade of changes that result to the production of the sickled red blood cell will take place due to dehydration. Now, extremes of temperature, the temperature could be cold or hot. What is tagged for other people who are not sickle cell warrior as normal cold may not be normal cold for us. It may be extreme cold. So we should be able to identify which one is conducive for us. At what temperature is it advisable that it is not too cold? At what temperature is advisable that it is not too hot? Now, in fact, when I was in Nigeria throughout my life, it was only exposure to cold that triggered crisis. I never experienced exposure to hot weather resulting to crisis until I got to Saudi Arabia. And I started getting exposed to temperature as high as 45 degrees and developed crisis. So I was like, what is the meaning of this? It was like a new experience. So on both extremes, I've experienced that, okay, cold could result to crisis, and then heat, too hot, can also result to crisis. Then hypoxia. Some of these conditions can also reduce to hypoxia is basically reduced oxygen within the blood cells. The red blood cell needs oxygen. Once the red blood cell is deprived of oxygen, it will result to a lot of reaction that will cause it to be sickled. And then acidosis. Now, in the area of hypoxia, I just want to say this briefly. That is why it's also said advisable that people with sickle cell disorder or people living with sickle cell, as much as possible, should not live in places on the high altitude, because the higher you go, the lower the oxygen. And so I have worked in regions where it is high up the mountain and had crisis frequently. And so people with sickle cell disorder advisable don't live where there is high altitude. Apart from the fact that high altitude could be colder, also there could be low oxygen in that region. So those two factors can trigger a crisis for people in that region. So what is a sickle cell crisis? We have the hemolytic crisis, which is basically the breakdown of the red blood cells. Hemolytic from the word hemolysis. Hemolysis is breakdown of the red blood cells to result into loss of blood. So the person will have reduced blood in the system. So different factors that can cause the sickle cell crisis to occur can result to a hemolytic crisis, whereby there is frequent breakdown of red blood cells. And then when the red blood cell is broken down, bilirubin, a particular chemical in the body, is also released. And it's one that is responsible for the yellow color of the urine and then the yellow color of the eye. So when you often see, children, people with sickle cell having yellow eyes, yellow color urine, or it is getting darker, it's an indication that, hemolysis is occurring in the body, and possibly frequently. Now, for people with sickle cell anemia, of those of us with sickle cell disorder, the sickled red blood cell has a short lifespan compared to the normal red blood cell. Normal red blood cell, the lifespan is 120 days. But for people with sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disorder, whether sickle cell anemia, sickle cell trait, all of us sickle cell warriors, our red blood cell lives for, like, once it's sickled, lives for less than at times 20 days or 60 days. And so after those periods, they break down because the body identifies it as foreign and then destroys it. Now, also there's a vaso-occlusive crisis, which is most of the time the common, the pain crisis. Pains mostly in the bones and other regions. It could be the leg, it could be the hand, it could be the back, the chest, different parts of the body where you have the bone, frequent crisis. You can have pain crisis there. Then there's also the sequestration crisis, which is a function of the spleen. Now, the spleen is one of the organs in the body. It's located at the left part of the lower of the rib, at the lower part of the left rib, below the place where your heart is. That's where you have the spleen. Now, the spleen is an organ in the body that removes foreign bodies, anything foreign, germs in the body, in the blood vessels, they remove it. Now, because the sickled red blood cell is also recognized by the spleen as foreign, what the spleen does is the spleen removes it, mops it off from the blood circulation. And as the spleen is doing that, it's saying, there will be frequent hemolysis. More red blood cells should be produced. There will be demand on the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells because of the decrease in amount in the body. And then as it is producing more, it is also producing sickled red blood cells. And then the sickled red blood cells is being mopped up again by the spleen. So there is increased production, there is increased breakdown, there is increased mopping up by the spleen. As the spleen continues to mop up more tagged foreign red blood cells, which is the sickled red blood cell, the spleen gets enlarged and results what we call splenomegaly. Now it gets to a point whereby the spleen just suddenly shrinks, and then it's as if it has disappeared. we call that one medically autosplenectomy. Ectomy means cut. So it's like the spleen just cut itself off. And so it's like it just reduced drastically to a small amount, or it's as if it's not even there. And so one of the things the spleen does is that the spleen serves the body in terms of immunity. It's part of the immune system for the body. So once it has shrunk in size, it means the immune function it performs for the body is compromised. So that causes people with sickle cell warriors to be exposed to infection the more. And that's why you see we are advised take out your vaccines whenever there's a possibility of infection. Use medication, see your doctor on time, because of that function of the spleen, which reduces
So David, are you still
now.
there?
There's also
Okay.
Okay.
The connection had gone slightly when you're talking about the spleen.
Okay. I said the spleen, one of the function it does in the body is to mop up foreign bodies. So the spleen recognizes the sickled red blood cell as a foreign body. And so what it does is once it recognizes it as foreign body in the blood circulation, in the blood vessels, it removes it, mops it up. And so once there is removal of the foreign body from the red blood cells, the sickled red blood cells from the blood circulation, there will be increased demand on the bone marrows to produce more red blood cells. And then those one will produce both mature and immature red blood cells. Those immature red blood cells quickly become sickled, and then the spleen removes it. So as the spleen continues to remove more sickled red blood cells from the circulation, the spleen gets enlarged, and it becomes what we call splenomegaly. The spleen suddenly gets enlarged and keeps getting enlarged. And so that's when you see people with sickle cell warriors having a distended abdomen, particularly on the left side. Especially when they are below 5 years, 6 or 7 years. It's usually because of the enlargement of the spleen. So it gets to a point whereby the spleen suddenly shrinks, just reduces drastically in size, and then it is as if it is no longer there. Now, one of the functions the spleen performs is to serve the immunity of the body. In other words, it represents the immune system for the body to fight anything foreign. So once the spleen reduces in size, this function is compromised. It's not able to perform this function properly. And so that is one of the reasons why people with sickle cell warriors are easily predisposed to infection, because the immune system function from the spleen that is reduced is compromised. And so when foreign bodies like germs are found in the red blood cells, there may be a difficulty for the spleen to be able to identify it and remove them. Okay, so there's also another crisis called ablastic crisis. This one is rare this generation, and in past the set was often. There are 3 different types of blood cells: the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the platelets. The red blood cells is the one we know that's affected. It's like the transport blood cells in the blood vessels. The white blood cell is called it's like the fighting cells, the soldiers that protect the body from foreign invasion. And then the platelet is like a police that arrest bleeding. So whenever there's a bleeding, the platelets are formed within that region to prevent bleeding. So for ablastic crisis, what happens is that all these red blood cells are reduced, or their production stops. And so each one of these blood cells, the red blood cell, when it is reduced, comes with problems, complications. White blood cells, when it is reduced, comes with complications. Platelets, when it is reduced, comes. So ablastic crisis is very horrible. But thank God, I think this generation it has reduced, and it's rare. We don't frequently hear about it. And so there's also the acute chest syndrome, whereby there is sudden chest pain, and then presentation as if the person has pneumonia, but there may be no pneumonia in terms of infection, and then there will be difficulty with breathing. And in the past, the person will be gasping for breath, what we call dyspnea. In the past, it's often one of the ways they identify it while I was in the medical school is that they advise that if somebody comes to the clinic or the hospital is having difficulty with breathing, pains, and then is finding difficult, is gasping for breath, and you do tests, I discovered that there is no. It seems as if a chest X-ray seems as if it is pneumonia, but there's no organism, germ cultured from the blood cells. What's going on? Or it's from the sputum. check the eyes, and if you see that the eyes is yellow, quickly run a sickling test, and that's how you know that, oh, probably this is just acute chest syndrome from somebody that has sickle cell anemia. So one of the problems in the past is that because it's difficult to identify, people confuse it for pneumonia. They rush them with flu, they do a lot of things, and then the right thing is not done, and the person gives up and dies because they don't understand what it is. So now researchers and more experience is making the health workers to be equipped more to know how to manage acute chest syndrome. Okay, time is going on. So sickle cell complications, delayed puberty. While other people are reaching puberty at the normal period, for people with sickle cell, at times 16 years, 18 years, that is when they are reaching, they start seeing their first signs of puberty. For some women, that probably, for normal women, ladies, maybe your first menopause is in 13 years. For people with sickle cell, at times could be as bad as 16 years, 18 years, 20 years. That's when they see their first menopause. There's also dactylitis called hand and foot syndrome. What happens is that the hands at the joint region and the ankle, the leg at the ankle region are swollen and painful. And so that's why they call it hand and foot syndrome. Those are the two parts it affects. There's also priapism, the penile shaft in the male, which is the penis of the male organ, becomes elongated and then painful. It's as if it's erected, as if, an erection, as if the person is engaged in sexual intercourse when there's erection, but it's not sexual intercourse. Neither is it aroused by sexual intercourse. And it's because the blood vessels supplying the penis could be blocked by the sickled red blood cells. So once it is blocked, the penis will now become erected, the erection will be prolonged, and it will be painful. And they also define it as purposeless. Why? Because ideally, when the penis is erected, it's either because of sexual intercourse or because the person wants to urinate. But it's not because of any of these two for purpose. So that's why they call it purposeless penile erection. So it's purposeless, it's painful, and then it's persistent. And then for some, when it's not managed early, it can result to impotency, whereby the function of the penile organ will be compromised. So there's also stroke, whereby what is also called cerebrovascular accident, by somebody could become unconscious for a while or semi-conscious, and then there will be weakness in lateral parts of the body. Some could have weakness in all the arms. Some could have weakness on the left side, both the hand and the left hand and the left leg, or they could have weakness on the legs, or they could have weakness on both hands and the legs. So stroke manifests in different ways. So sickle cell also can result to it. When the sickle red blood cell blocks the blood circulation to the brain, it can result to not only stroke, but other conditions, cerebral infarction and the rest. Also kidney, enuresis. Enuresis is bedwetting. I remember I suffered this a lot until when I was maybe 10 or 14 years. I did not just understand why, and I kept bedwetting. So it was later on when I started reading more about that I understood. And then medically, there have been little research to understand how it occurs. But I've now used this to encourage parents that, you see a child bedwetting and maybe a sickle cell warrior bedwetting, and you are beating the child, scolding the child. It is not the child's fault. It is caused, and no matter what you do, it is caused by sickle cell disorder. So what you need to do is to go and see a therapist, a hematologist. You may also need to go and see a kidney doctor, a nephrologist. You may also need to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist to help us some form of psychotherapy to help the child. So people need to understand this properly to be able to manage these different stages. Because remember, assuming a child is bedwetting and the parents keep scolding the child unnecessarily for what he or she cannot control. So these are part of the problems in the kidney. Also, there's chronic leg ulcer, especially within the bony regions of the leg. There is other bone complications like osteomyelitis, avascular necrosis. There's gallbladder stones, what we call cholestasis. There's retinopathy and other problems with the eyes. Recently, I started observing some problems with my vision, and I had to go to the ophthalmologist, and he recommended I should get reading glasses. So there are different problems that even with some that we don't know, that sickle cell, because just imagine any organ or any part of the body that is supplied by blood vessels. Once red blood cells become sickle and they occlude the supply, there could be a problem. So the eyes receive circulation from the blood. So once there is a blockage within the blood circulation to the eyes, there will be a problem. Pregnancy. In pregnancy, there could be premature contraction, there could be preterm delivery, there could be preeclampsia, whereby the woman has a protein in her urine, has a high blood pressure, and also has seizures. So it has been identified also that women that are pregnant, sickle cell warriors that are pregnant will have some of these conditions. That's why it is important once a woman like a sickle cell warrior starts antenatal, becomes pregnant, she immediately start antenatal clinic so that they can be monitored properly. And then there's also chronic fatigue. This is one is what most, I think some people have started experiencing. I also have been experiencing it. Let me just say 1 or 2, 3 things about what medical research says about chronic fatigue. They've not been able to identify what could be the cause, but they liken it to some other conditions, like someone with chronic diseases, like people with maybe chronic kidney disease, people with cancer. The kind of fatigue they have is similar to what people with sickle cell disorder also have. And also people with HIV also have some chronic fatigue also. There's a similarity with it. Now, let me quickly try and describe it. Is this bad that at times, you feel just suddenly you feel tired, as if you're going to faint, very dizzy. And then you tell yourself, let me just take a nap, maybe 1 to 2 hours nap, and then I'll feel okay. Or you take a water, or you take a drink, and then after the nap, you wake up maybe in the next 2 to 3 hours, and you feel weaker than before the nap, and you are worried that what is all this? That I expected that after sleeping I should feel better, but now I'm awake and I'm feeling weaker. It's just chronic fatigue, and they're also likened to other factors like, okay, because of pain crisis. At times, pain crisis can occur at night, which prevents us from sleeping. So when you can't sleep at night, you'll be in the morning, you'll be so fatigued because of the sleeplessness at night that pain crisis causes. They also add this to some other conditions, like some of the medications we use could also be responsible for fatigue. And then they also add this to the breakdown of the red blood cells, since the red blood cells supply energy to the body. Once the red blood cells are broken down, they can't supply energy to the body where they are needed, to be fatigue. So most of these things, medicines you're saying, is probably a risk factor, but we don't really know how it occurs. Then there's also epistaxis. That is the diagram there. Bleeding in the nose. It is just sudden. I experienced it before as a teenager. Very sudden, and then there'll be. Unlike when people with hypertension have epistaxis, people with hypertension can also have something like this, but it's different. It will just be like spiral. It's like an open tap, and the blood will just be rushing out. So there is some theory to it, but I think there is still more research that needs to be done in the medical field. There's also pica. Pica is a problem that I've had many parents of sickle cell warriors combat with. The child will be eating inordinate objects, things that like sand. I suffered for it for a long. I used to then till when I finished secondary school. That's when it stopped. Eating sand, eating stones, eating chalk, eating nose trees, the debris of the nose trees. There are many. Some people eat paper, some people eat crayon. There are many, and so it's like an addiction. You can't stop it. At times, when I was growing up, before eventually God delivered me and I stopped, because essentially by God's deliverance. At times, after we've eaten and I'm full, I will still go outside to be looking for sand to eat. And I will never be full until I've eaten sand, no matter how full I am with what I've eaten, the food I've eaten. It seems as if, so it's more like a psychological problem. What is going on? Like an addiction you can't stop. And at times when a parent sees this or a child eating this, they don't know what is going on, and the child also doesn't know what's going on. So that's why more researches are needed to be able to help understand some of these things, and then we can know how to stop it. There are mental problems like depression, memory loss, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, with intellect, processing, speech, attention. There's also memory, short-term memory loss. There's also mood swings. At times you could wake up in the morning and you feel that you're not interested in anything today. Those are part of the mood swing. Recently, I started encouraging myself and encouraging others that there are moments you had mood swing as sickle cell warriors, when you feel so weak, you feel so tired. Not that you're physically tired, but your mind is just like you're not interested in doing anything. Now, and then you could start thinking negatively that, is this how my life is going to run out? I quickly tell myself, see, don't think that is you, that is not you. It is just sickle cell disorder. And this moment will pass away. So just brace up, pray if you can pray. At times during those prayers of mood swing, you can't even pray. You can't even read the word of God. You are just hopeless. You want life to end. So, but don't dwell on it. That's what God has been able to teach me to encourage others. Don't dwell on it. Understand it's a moment, and that moment will pass away. And once that moment passes away, you are free. And then you come back to a moment whereby you have supernatural strength, that you have supernatural strength to do impossible. So don't use the mood swings when you had periods of depression, when you have periods of anxiety as who you are. It is not who you are. It is just some of those things that come with sickle cell disorder. So these are some of the complications of sickle cell. I think I'm running out of time. Care for sickle cell warrior, physical health care, pharmacological in terms of using drugs and non-pharmacological. It is very good sickle cell. Every sickle cell warrior registers in the hospital with their doctor and go for their clinic regularly. And as much as possible, I will advise, it is only what your physician or your doctor prescribes that you should use, because they have investigations they do to be able to monitor you. If you are going to introduce any drug, let your doctor know about it, because you are not a guinea pig that should be experimented by people who just want to try drugs and market it and sell it. So get a doctor, because I practice orthodox medicine, so I may not be able to say much about traditional complementary medicine, but for orthodox medicine, we work by science. Get your doctor and let it and be regular at your clinics. If you have any fresh complaint, discuss it with your doctor. And then it is important your doctor also start reading about sickle cell, because there are some things that the doctors will learn from you because you are also experiencing it. Okay, there's also the need for mental care to tackle depression, panic, mood and suicidal tendency, whereby psychotherapy will be needed from seeing the psychologist or psychiatrist. And then there's also need for social care, very important, family support. Funds is very important. Social systems should be in place that covers health, employment to mitigate discrimination against sickle cell warriors. Discrimination in the area of education, or is called that you're a sickle cell warrior, often having crisis, often falling sick. And so some schools will be like, or some of your colleagues will discriminate and like, oh, who is this person? You're always falling sick. Discrimination in the place of employment, they don't want to employ because they think it will be low productivity since you are falling sick, absenteeism from work. So all of those things are the support social care system that is needed in the community and the family to be able to address it, so that sickle cell warriors should not be exposed to discrimination. Discrimination comes with attendant psychiatric, psychological problems. So already sickle cell disorder has psychological problems. You are now compounding it with discrimination. Those are the things that social care will take care of. So treatment, a cure presently is bone marrow or stem cell transplant, and under palliative treatment, whereby you just manage it. Now, prevention of crisis, and then prevention of sickle cell disorder. How do you prevent sickle cell disorder? Genetic counseling and testing. When you're able to identify the person's genotype, you advise how they should marry, so that they will be able to avoid having children with sickle cell traits and children with sickle cell anemia. So the advice of sickle cell warriors: avoid sickle cell triggers. Like, what are the things you should do? We said dehydration can result to crisis. So how do you take care of, mitigate that one? Drink enough fluid regularly and daily. Now, I'll quickly say, do what works for you. I am somebody that I don't normally feel comfortable to drink water, but I like some things that are sweet. So I combine juice with water and I mix it. Maybe 50% juice, 50% water, equal volume, mix it. So as I'm taking something sweet in that liquid, it encourages me to drink more fluid. So learn how it works for you as a sickle cell warrior and make it work for you. Avoid the extremes of temperature, either too cold or too hot. Define what is too cold or too hot for you. Avoid stress, physical or mental. You should be able to understand when it is stressful for you, when it is stressful, when you engage in your work and you discover that, oh, I need to take a rest. Understand it. Prevent infections by hygiene and other infection prevention and control practices. Regular visits to the sickle cell clinic and be compliant with your medications with a competent doctor. Vaccination as is recommended. Go to your hospital and let them know the vaccines you should take. And then be pragmatic to know what works for you and make it work for you. And last and not the most, let us depend on God solely. Let us depend on God to help us overcome sickle cell. Quickly, I want to say this here before we progress. When I was growing up and I understood I had sickle cell, I didn't want to be sickle cell anemia at all. So I was looking for solution, praying, going for deliverance, fasting, doing all I could do, even being introduced to some herbal medicine that, oh, use this. Along the line, God told me, I'm not going to heal you from sickle cell. Rather, I'm going to use your life I'm going to use sickle cell to glorify my name in your life. So I was like, what does that even mean? As in, to me, when I was growing up, I don't see how infirmity can give glory to God. So it was like, I don't really understand this. So, but even after God said that, I still was looking for solution. I wanted it out. Fasting, praying, going for different deliverance program. When I now discovered that, oh, I was not getting anywhere. God has said it. I'm trying to look for a way out and nothing. Okay. So I just stopped. And then I started, okay, embracing what are the things also got to understand that there are certain things are passed through, not just because of me regarding not only sickle cell, but different things. That was how God told me. And it is not just because of me, but because of the people who will be in contact with the future, so that from my experience, I can share to inspire hope in other people. Though initially when I was growing up, championing or sickle cell, creating awareness of sickle cell, it wasn't part of me. Because I was not still interested in really, even when I was in medical school, most of my colleagues did not know that I'm sickle cell. And God did, I could say now that I can really see what God meant. Though I've not seen a lot of it, but there are certain things He did in my life in medical school, even while working, that I could only say it is the grace of God. Because even people with sickle cell, people that don't have sickle cell, tell you they can't do such things. I was engaged with business in medical school as I was a medical student, and I won 2 business awards. I was engaged with our departmental conference, Nigerian Conference of Christian Medical and Data Students. I was the editor-in-chief at a particular time, and when I was the editor-in-chief, our publication was the best in the country, and I was given the award of the best editor-in-chief. And we were traveling from the north to the south, from the east to the west, traveling. There are times when, but you know what, that doesn't mean I wasn't having crisis. There are periods I had crisis, point crisis that lasted for a day, a week, 2 weeks. There are times they prevented me from revision for exam. And while I was on the bed with the pain crisis, I will be recalling the things I've read. That was how I did my revision. And to God be the glory, I will still pass it. So when I see this and I reflect back, I tell people, oh, there is a grace of God upon me that just helps me to be able to do what looks like impossible. And then through that experience, God was able to teach me that there are no limitations in life except for the limits you create in your mind. Now, this is how I got to understand it. Sickle cell is still there. I still experience those crises, but I don't allow those crises to limit me. Where in my mind, after I go through a crisis, I don't stay back and the crisis leaves and I stay back on the bed and like, oh, so this is the end of life. I drop my aspiration, I drop my goals, I drop my vision. No, I will stand up because I will not allow it to limit my mind. I will not create a place for it in my mind to limit me, and I keep moving forward. So even after this, stand up again, another presentation come, I will do it because there is no limitation in life except for the one you create in your mind. There is a limitation of sickle cell in my body, but I'll never allow it to limit me in my mind and stop me from what God wants me to do in life. So thank you, everybody. Praise the Lord.
Thank you so much for that information. I just, some of when you were speaking, I was just blown away because I was thinking, wow, I can relate to these experiences as well. The brain fog, I was laughing when you mentioned about the brain fog because that's something that I've really been experiencing quite severely, to the point where I feel really stupid, almost like I don't know anything. All my studies, everything that I've recently studied, I feel like I can't even recall to mind all my knowledge. And I'm quite qualified, and I just feel like even my business, the business that I used to do, the holistic business, my mind, I can't remember anything at the moment. And I know that when we speak, words have power to give life or death. And even like what you were saying about with the mental, the mental state as well, and trying to kind of overcome that, because I've really been facing that as a trait warrior. So it's just been extremely severe recently. Well, since going into crisis since last year, March, with the headaches that started. Oh, it was just, I just could relate. And then also with the stroke as well, having a mini stroke. And I'm using recently I've been using like a bolster cushion, because it's almost like the right side. When I was in hospital, it was the right side of my arm and my leg that were affected, and now it's just my arm, and I can use my right arm a bit better now, but one of my fingers, the index finger, is not actually working. It's it's sort of, I have to force it with my other hand to move. It's literally just not able to grip bottles. So I'm still asking my mom to help me to open bottles and things, you know, the ones with the twisty lids, and doing things. And it's just, wow, some of the similarities between the trait crises and sickle cell anemia, full-blown crises as well. Um, but I just, wow, it's just every time I hear somebody speaking about sickle cell disorder, it's just wow, the I guess the injustice done to the full spectrum of, you know, carriers of sickle cell as well, not really being aware of all these things that we can experience. Um, it's just, it just is continually mind blowing. Um, but yeah, how did you find, like, I know that you were saying as a medical doctor, you were so busy, and that's one of my questions to you was, um, I mean, it's mind boggling that you were able to manage. And like you said, I mean, as a Christian myself as well, I just feel that, you know, it is definitely the grace of God that gets us through. Regardless of whether people believe that or not, you know, it's down to individual beliefs. But I know that for me, it's definitely the grace of God, and for you as well, being so busy, um, just managing your time and resting. How did you find you were able to do that during your studies and business and life in general? How did you find that you were able to cope?
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let me say this again. It's by the grace of God, you know. Okay, well, after God told me that I wasn't going to heal me from sickle cell, I was one day praying in church where I think we're having prayer meeting, and then I was like listing down the responsibilities I'm engaging. See, I'm this kind of person that if you understand, as sickle cell warriors, we tend to be always active.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like sitting down in one place. We always want to do something. Okay, let
Mm-hmm.
me give you this example. There was a day I had crisis when I think that was still in secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the laundry, washing clothes with my hands outside, and then it started raining. And when it started raining, and I ran inside, and then I started having crisis. And my
Mm-hmm.
parents were there with me, and I was like almost 30 minutes, 1 hour the rain in that pain crisis. As I was having a pain crisis, I was looking outside and I was still seeing the clothes there, and my mind was still on the cloak. So after 1 hour, the crisis stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stood up and I went back to the clothes to finish. And my dad came back and like, what's wrong with you? That you're the one that was complaining of pain. When the crisis started, you know how the pain crisis is like, everybody who could not rest. What is going on? So it was like, you were the one that was crying of pain. It's like a woman, imagine a woman in labor pain.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Wow.
when it is about time to deliver the baby.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of pain. That is how
Wow.
that's how the pain crisis is like. So
Yeah.
when you're in that condition, everybody around you is also restless. Like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
So my dad was like, you are the one that was in crisis recently.
Mm-hmm.
You just finished, the crisis just stopped and you have to wash the plate. Come on, get back inside. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I was like, well, I was in crisis. Nobody helped me to wash the clothes. I still have to finish washing the clothes. So if you don't want me to go back and with the clothes, let somebody wash for me. But because
Mm-hmm.
nobody was there to wash it for me, I went back. So I observed sickle cell warriors, we have this resilience. And if we choose to tap into it,
Mm-hmm.
I believe it is a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
If we choose to tap into it, we'll be able to discover many. Now, so while I was in church that day,
Mm-hmm.
and we're praying, and I was listening down before God, I will be involved in this in church, apartment, on campus, I'm also an escort in a department. How will I manage all this?
Mm-hmm.
And then God, that scripture, I was in church, and that scripture just opened up. And the Bible in front of me opened up that scripture, and that was here, Mark. The person that had it painted that part.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 2 Corinthians 12:9 or 12:9, where he said, my grace is sufficient for you,
Mm-hmm.
for my power is made perfect in your weakness.
Weakness.
When I am weak, that's when it takes over.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if I have to tell people, I have to tell people that, I think I have the strength to do it, I will know I'm lying, because it's not, I don't have the strength. That is God's
Mm-hmm.
grace that's helping me to do it. But technically to be able to advise people. In medical school, one of the things I understood and I discovered about myself that I tend to be sound academically. I'm a very fast reader. And apart from being a very fast reader, I can read in any environment, studies.
Wow.
I can be in a public transport where people are talking and still reading. So I understood those strengths. You have to identify your strengths and use it to your advantage. So I understood those strengths. And then...
Oh, I think we've lost. Oh. Okay. I think you're on mute, Dr. David. Bear with me.
Yeah,
okay, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. So
no, it's okay.
I understood those strengths and I capitalized. I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
I understood those my strengths and I was able to use it properly. I see. I will still travel. Now, another thing, I like traveling a lot as a person. I like adventure. There is this course that we did when I was in training level, an NGO course, and we are told to choose a name that best describes us. And I chose the name Daredevil.
Wow.
I use it to illustrate that whatever is impossible, don't tell me. Once you tell me, I'll go for it.
I think that's a sickle cell thing.
Yeah, it is a sickle cell thing. Now, sickle cell warrior that you have that thing, understand it's a strength for you and use it appropriately. See, I am a very fast reader. I don't wait till close to exams to start reading. Immediately they give us notes, I start reading. I start reading. I understand that because I'm a fast reader, I can read once or twice or three. There's no course I sat for this exam in medical school, or even when I did MBA, or even when I did MCS. There was no course I sat for the exam that I did not finish. In terms of the notes we were given, I did not finish. I finished everything about the notes, no matter how voluminous it is. There's no single one. Because I was just a fast reader and I was able to read fast. So understanding that strength in my academics. And then that, I can talk. I'm good with talking, and I could use my topic. I could quote scriptures properly. I could negotiate, and so I was able to use that to go into business, marketing, and so that helped me to be able to dive into business. So I was able to understand areas of my strengths, and then I started areas or the platforms that will help me. And to God be the glory, each one of those platforms, I was just receiving awards.
Wow.
And I was not doing I was doing just because, this is a passion.
Yeah.
And the scripture says in Ecclesiastes that whatever your hands find to do, that was one of the scriptures that started guiding when I was young. God used that scripture to guide me. Whatever your hands find to do it with all your might.
Yes.
So whenever my hands find something, I give it all my might.
Yeah.
And that was how God just to his glory.
Amen. Wow, that's powerful. I'm just smiling because I think, like you said, I think especially with sickle cell, because it affects everything. And as a trait warrior, growing up since 5 years old, coming back to the UK, I mean, we live back home. For those who don't know where my roots are from, my mom is Zambian, and my father is Moroccan, and I was born in the UK. We moved back home. I think I was just past 1 year old, and we moved back home. And then we came back when I was 5. And while I was back home, I remember my childhood was amazing. I never suffered, despite the heat. The weather did me good. The sun. I need to go back home. The sun did me fantastic. I was happy. My health was fine. I could even swim. Coming over here, we came in winter time, and since we arrived, I was often sick. I was a very, very sickly child. I presented like I had full-blown sickle cell anemia all the way growing up. The only thing that I didn't have, my skin is already fair, but what I've noticed is I used to notice as growing up in all my photographs, my face was extremely fair. But even when it almost looked paler than the rest of my body, it looked like I was just completely white, like a ghost. And I noticed that that's the times that I was always sick. It was always winter time that I would look really, really, really sickly in my face. Even though I didn't have yellowing of the eyes, my skin would show that I was pale, and it would show that I don't know if I was jaundiced because the doctors never checked. Medically, they just said, oh, you have the trait, so it wasn't really relevant or significant to them. But that was something that I began noticing growing up, looking back at pictures, just seeing that actually I was really, really almost like a ghost. And then I would get really clammy when the fevers would onset, and then the stabbing pains in the bones. An area that I also experienced pain was the pubic bone for me, very, very much. As a child, especially growing up last year, every so often I might be walking somewhere, and it can be really humiliating in public, because I might be walking somewhere and suddenly I'll have crisis pains in my hands, but in my pubic bone, and I'll just double over in pain, and just maybe stop for a while and then just have to breathe. But just knowing, as a sickle cell warrior, sickle cell trait warrior myself, I'm very, very stubborn. If somebody tells me no, I can't do something, or somebody challenges me, I rise to the challenge. I find a way to do it. And even, I think even in this past year, what I've come to realize is my strengths have like yourself, have come out. They've been brought out of me, and I guess to me, as a Christian, just going back to like some of the songs in church, like Refiner's Fire, and you know, through the fires, through the fire and the storms, and through all of that, when you weather them, what are you left with is that perseverance and that strength, and that going through, it brings out that strength in you, that resilience. It develops your character. It helps you to develop your character. And I've noticed, I mean, just as sickle cell warriors in general, over the whole spectrum, you know, we are all so strong, so resilient, so to overcome something that isn't really well known about, isn't really researched as much as, you know, other illnesses, to have, or to be told as a trait warrior that, oh no, you know, this isn't anything in relation to your sickle cell status, and be ignored for so long, to have that mental strength and to not go crazy is definitely because last year I thought I was going crazy. how how did you find your family were, you know, when you first started having crises as a child, when you were growing up? um how did your family relate to you? Because I know that you said both your parents didn't have, they'd never had crises before, um as trait warriors, but yourself, how did they sort of cope, and how did you find growing up, how you managed to cope as well, um you know, just in relation to other children, and in schooling as well? How did your teachers and peers relate to you? Were they understanding?
Okay, for my family, my mom is a nurse, now retired. So
Okay.
she was able to use understanding as a nurse. My family, my parents got to know early, because at least from the time I could remember, I was told that I have sickle cell. But you know, there was still limited information about it back then, 1980s, 1990s. There was still limited information about it. So, but my mom was able to use her experience in the hospitals where she worked and as a nurse to be able to help me manage. So most of the time, the crisis I had while I was in the medical school, while I was in secondary, okay, so I went to a boarding school. So, but when the crisis I had when I was in primary school, mostly medical school, were at home. I managed it at home with my mom in charge of the management. And at times, this crisis could be like a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, and I will be on the bed at home.
Wow.
So it was just God, because sincerely, that I didn't even die. Okay, let me say this. While I was growing up, God told me something. Even though I personally, I want to say I don't accept it, but God told me that sickle cell anemia cannot kill me.
Wow.
So I have been in situations where I knew I could have died, but I didn't just die, because I knew that what He told me.
Yeah.
Even though
You held on.
I personally, it's not as if I'm even holding on to it. Personally, I would have preferred to die because of the different crises. But here is him saying sickle cell anemia cannot kill you. So,
Wow.
so I've been through crisis, and then I just now come out of it, no matter how bad it becomes, because of that word.
Wow.
So 2 weeks crisis, pain crisis throughout. Being in that condition of active labor pain for the whole 2 weeks. And I just know that I'll come out of it. And people around me will be afraid. What? And that's I'm the one that's even consoling them. So my family was very supportive because they got to understand. My siblings will rally around me and assist. They're supportive. Now in primary school, I can't remember clearly because it's as if this issue with this memory loss. I realized that it's as if some part of my experiences in primary school has just been removed from my brain.
Wow.
I don't know. So, but I think the images just come. But I can't say how it was like with my colleagues in primary school. But secondary school, there was a stigma from some people. In fact, some people will be mocking me that sickle cell. They call it then you are sickler. They call it sickler. That you don't live long. By 18 years you die. So I had that from people, from my colleagues, but I didn't just allow that one to bother me. I was stubborn. Stubborn. I won't say naughty side. Stubborn in terms of I just want to do what I do. There was part of this course called agriculture, whereby you learn about agriculture and then you go to the field to practicalize it. And so they will be giving cutlass to cut bushes. We'll be giving hoes to make ridges. And I want to make ridges like other people. And after a while, I'll be so tired. And I'll but my colleagues will go on, cut grasses, and after a while, I'll be so tired. And I'm like, what is going on? I wanted to be able to do it like others. So some of them are some of the experience I have. And then when I started medical school also, I was not really forthcoming. Some of my colleagues never got to know while we were in medical school that I'm a sickle cell warrior. I just managed it. They just realized that for some weeks, because medical school you stay more on your own. For some weeks and then because I could come from home and then, but those who are close to me, my friends knew. So use that to manage through medical school. But sincerely, throughout it's been God's grace. Now in my career, while I work, my colleagues know that I'm sickle cell. So at times when I know the environment is not conducive for me in terms of it is too cold, I'll switch off this and I'll tell them. Or if I know there are many people that I can't switch off this, I'll relocate to another room and they understand. Now because I also do my work properly. So hardly do I take days off, but anytime I take a day off, they know it's authentic. In fact, when I now tell them, they say, "Oh, take more days off. That's you should." And I have rested, and the price are gone. There's nothing to go on. Yeah. So that's how it's been. God has just used people at different points to assist and support.
Wow, that's amazing. It's incredible because just hearing you speak, there were things I think just whilst I've been recovering myself out of this extremely traumatic year, I was just thinking, wow, the mental trauma it's more than the physical, I think, because the physical, that it will pass, God willing, it will pass, all being well. I kind of, even at the time when you're going through it, you don't necessarily feel, because for me, it was like 3 months that I seemed to be on and off, in and out of fevers, stabbing pains. I couldn't use my hands, couldn't use my feet, couldn't feed myself. Mommy was doing everything for me. So it was just so exhausting, so debilitating. And it's the worst that I've ever had for 3 months. I've never been that bad. Normally it would be about 8 weeks I would be bad from childhood. And just as you were saying, the memory loss as well, there were things that I couldn't remember from my childhood. So many, I've got the odd memory here and there of growing up as a child, especially in this country. My memories beforehand in South Africa, they were all beautiful memories. My family, I mean, we have such a huge family. So, and we're blessed in that respect. So family is always a big thing. But I remember all those times. I remember specific moments when my grandpa came over here as well for the first time to the UK. And it was just, those memories are beautiful. But then the times between are very foggy, very gray areas. There's maybe certain things that I've experienced this past year have triggered certain memories. And I remember back and I think, oh my goodness, this happened. Or I'll just ask my mom and it's almost like a dream. And it's almost like a different world, it just feels like a dream, almost. And then I remember, and it's only just because of reflection now, having time to reflect, that I've been able to recall that these things happened and these things were very real, but they were all traumatic memories because there was so much trauma from going through so much and not really having medical intervention as well. So I wasn't really relieved. Mommy grew up just, knowing that I was sick, but she was a prayer warrior. She spent her time on her knees just praying for me, and just praying that God would cover me and protect me growing up, because she didn't really have the knowledge that this is what she's going through. They just didn't really, she didn't know what to do, and she never took me to the hospital because the doctor just fobbed her off and she didn't know. So it was very serious. It was only when I got older and I've had pneumonia as well. So things like, I ended up going backwards and forwards to the hospital for weeks, in fact 3 months. I was going backwards and forwards with pain in my chest, and then it would come and it would go. And I even went on holiday, and then I came back and I ended up in high dependency unit following the week from holiday, and I was in so much pain, and it was pneumonia. So it's just specific key points in life that is like, just having those memories and just being able to hear things that are relatable, that I can say, wow, surely it's only God's grace that has kept me this far. And there's definitely a purpose, like you said, for that resilience, that strength, that fight that God has given us to not give up. Because wow, dealing with all of that combined is too much for a single human body to bear. It's just wow. It's just all I can do is just laugh, because it's like, wow, thank you, Lord, for your grace, because that's literally what I feel, as you said, 100% reiterate that it's God's grace and favor. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I have a couple more questions as well. So the stereotypes that I've heard from sickle cell, people just saying because sickle cell disease, sickle cell disorder, sickle cell trait, you don't look unwell. If your eyes are not yellow, I mean, if people don't really look at you to actually see you, I find that's the problem. People don't tend to look to see you. They tend to look to just make a judgment. But how have you found that made you feel, if people ever questioned your health or your well-being, just from a glance at you?
Okay. I was initially, when I was growing up, I was very secretive about it. I didn't want people to know.
Yeah.
I didn't want people to know about it. So because of the stigma, I was allowing it to get to me. But later on, when I started growing up, I think when I got to know God as a Christian, and I was growing as a teenager, whatever people say, I don't even care, because I know whatever you say, it's not who I am. And so, and then see, okay, another thing I want to say is, see, when I was growing from being a teenager to an adult, to my medical school, to career, most people did not get to know I'm sickle cell, except I get to tell them. Because when I'm in Christ, you won't know.
Wow.
And then the regular things that I should be doing, my job, my work, I'll be doing it properly, and I'll be doing other extra.
Wow.
So if somebody tells them that David Owoeye is sickle cell, they will say, no, it's not possible. It's not the David that is so, because I don't look like, I don't behave like, so I didn't have that whereby people look down on me because of sickle cell. Okay, but when I was in, when I finished medical school and I was doing my medical internship, there was this school posted to the north in Nigeria, Kaduna State, and then there was this colleague, medical intern, that after there was a day I finished night call. So after I finished the night call, I went to the room and I discovered that, oh, there was no water. I have to go and get water. So I carried 2 buckets to go and fetch water. The guy woke up and he saw me. And like, you just finished the night call. I said, yes. And you're carrying, so this guy, you're just going to die very soon. As in, he was surprised that you're just finishing a call. This kind of call, if he finishes it, he goes back to sleep immediately. Now I'm finishing the call. I'm not sleeping, and I'm still going to carry water, to fetch water, to wash clothes.
Yeah.
So people around me could not just understand, because when I tell them I'm sickle cell, they don't believe it, because you can't be sickle cell and be doing some of these things we see you do, because people that we know as sickle cell don't have that kind of strength. So I think I would say it's part of that thing God used as a display of his glory. That, when he said he's going to use it to glorify his name in my life. When they look at me, what they see is beyond what they think is sickle cell. But that doesn't mean in those periods I was not having crisis. I was always having crisis in those periods, but I will not allow it to limit me from doing whatever I could do. At times, even in the process of doing some of those things, I break down and I have a crisis. That does not mean the next day I will not pick up that thing again. So that was how God was able to use that word to train me that there are no limitations in life except for the ones you create in your mind. So
it's very true.
Be there physically, but not allow them to enter your mind.
Yeah, it's so true. I just want to say thank you, because I know through all the time that we've known each other, you know, from the moment that we connected, and I knew that you had sickle cell anemia, it was like, and I approached you and I was like, okay, is it possible that I'm suffering? Because these are the things I'm going through. And you know, you heard me. You never once from a medical perspective said it's not possible. You know, you even if it baffled you, you never made me feel like my experience as well wasn't valid. And it was like, wow, this, you know, especially when you heard a bit more about my story, and I was like, this is what I'm going through. And you said, this is for sure, you're going through a crisis. And you know, it was just hearing that, I think, did something mentally for me. It kind of just helped me to continue, you know, to keep pushing, to keep fighting, to be heard medically. And just you know, I it's just amazing hearing your story, seeing your strength, seeing your fight, knowing you've actually written a book as well. You know, I know that the book is entitled A Life with Sickle Cell Anemia. And how did you manage to you know, how I know that you're a prolific writer and you've won awards as well for editing and writing. So I mean, how did it come about that you'd write your story, you'd write your own book, and what's the purpose of the book as well? What do you hope it will achieve?
Okay. Concerning the book, I didn't even know I was going to write the book. I knew while I was in I think while I was a teenager, or while I was still in medical, or when I was in medical school, I knew I was going to write books. I knew I was going to write that based on my relationship with God. But I didn't know it was going to be, the first book was going to be about sickle cell. Even up till last year, 2 years ago, I didn't know. Okay, so I think I had some terrible moments of my life in 2018, 2019. So I was discussing with a friend about some of the problems financially, career, family, everything. And so even concerning my health, and he now said, David, that you just have to stay strong, that sometimes we pass through some things, not because of us, but because of those people God will bring us in contact with in the future. Now, while I was in medical school, exactly that statement, God told me, like almost, I graduated like almost in 2005, that's like almost 16 years back. When I was still maybe 300, like almost 20 years back, God told me that statement. Exactly the way my friend said it. So he mentioned it like in the next 18 years. When he mentioned it, it just came to my mind that start compiling, start talking about your experience to encourage others. Because all the while I was not really so concerned about all this sickle cell advocacy, sickle cell. I was not really concerned. I just other things, because I was still, maybe I would say I was still struggling with the aspect of how can God say He will use me to glorify His name with infirmity? How do you? So, but you know, it's not about what you think; it's about what God can do. So, just the Bible says that acknowledge Him in all your ways, and then in all your paths, just obey, follow His leading. So that's when God was like God's direction to start writing about my experiences. So I started recalling some of those experiences. That was September 2018. I started recalling some of those experiences, and I was putting it on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on different sickle cell group on Facebook. And I was sharing, and I was seeing the way it was getting responses, making impact. But I didn't even know I was going to release a book. So when I finished with some of those experiences, then I started writing some poems about sickle cell, compiling more poems about sickle cell. Now, the medical column of the book that talks about the medical information, Immediately I finished medical school, I had written about 70% of the material they had written it then. I didn't know why. I thought, well, maybe I felt I should release a book about sickle cell, but according to God, it was not yet the time. So, but I just wrote about those medical information, almost 70% of what is in the book about the medical information, I think second chapter. I had written it like almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I just saved it there. So it's like God was just bringing everything together when the time is right. So I now got to know that the first book I've written is as about sickle cell disorder. It was like God's instruction, just go.
Wow.
So during the COVID pandemic, I was involved with, I was in Nigeria, and I was involved with Nigerian Center for Disease Control with infection prevention and control practices, guidance, and expertise to share with them to help stop COVID-19. And then I was so particular, getting so much involved and agitated with it that God had to tell me, concentrate more on the book, concentrate more on the book.
Wow.
That was May 2020. So I started concentrating more on the book, compiling information, doing some more research, doing a lot of things, and glory. September, the book came. So it was more like, I would say it's more an instruction from God, because if I had my way, I would have wanted to release a book about medical science first rather than sickle cell. I didn't never imagine that I have to release a book about sickle cell.
I'm glad you did.
when God saw it was the right time, He just made all things work together for good.
Wow, amen. It's perfect timing, because literally by September was when I had to go back to work, and I was still having all these crazy problems that I was just so many complications that personally I've come to you and said to you, is this normal? You know, what's this that I'm experiencing? And then people, the more the group that we're in, you know, the Facebook support group, sickle cell trait support and information group, the more people started attending and joining the group, the more I was hearing that it's not just me, you know, so many other people with the trait were experiencing the same thing. And then I read things in your book, and it was like, this is my life, this is my story, this is my experience. I was just, the relief, it was so overwhelming. So I'm thankful to you for your book. I bought it as soon as you posted it in the group. I bought it straight away on the downloadable edition, because at times I couldn't even use my hands. It was one finger that I was using to type, to text, or to send messages in the group and things, and to write. I know that you know, I'm just so grateful. Thank you. And yes, 100% thank God.
It's thank God. It's not me, the sister. It's all about God.
Definitely. It really
and I'm
is.
grateful to God that it's inspiring and imparting you and everybody.
Definitely. It really, really is. You know, I pray that it's very successful, you know, to impact and to change lives, and to give people that knowledge, to give them that strength that I needed, that I felt that I didn't have. I just needed something to just give me clarification on what I was going through. And, you know, it was, especially considering most of the books that you read from authors, you don't necessarily know that author, you know, so having that personal relationship with an author where you're allowed to, you can communicate with them directly and say, okay, so you've written about this, and then I can ask you a bit more as well, even, you know, and you're still saying the same thing that's in your book. It's not like it's fabricated, it's real. This is your life. This is, you know, I think that really helped. That connection, that personal interaction with you was, I'm so grateful to God and to yourself as well for being willing to be a vessel. I know that you mentioned some of the crisis experiences within your book as well, and also will you be able to, I know that in the group you've shared your book as well, but can you give people a link maybe in the chat, just before we close, maybe put a link in the chat if you can, of where to buy your book as well, and that would be amazing, so that people at least are able to download it or to purchase it from whichever platform, and how they can order. Okay, thank you. So can I just ask, do you find that writing is a therapy for you? As a writer myself, I find that I love writing, but there's times that I can't actually hold a pen because my arm is swollen, and recently this year it's been on and off where it swells so much I can't hold a pen properly. Have you found that it's therapeutic for yourself to write?
Yes, I would say yes. There is this concept about is it health, arts in health, arts in health, or is it medicine in health? If you go online, check it. It's like a new discipline that
Okay.
the world is trying to understand better. That health in arts, or something like really correlation between health and arts, how arts can help you provide a form of therapy to manage some conditions. In
Yeah.
which some of the pain crises of sickle cell, personally, I have seen it done. And you see, some of the poems I wrote in the book were actually when I was having this crisis.
Yes. Wow.
And it was like the best experience I could have to write some of those things. Okay, like these, the poem that I talk about, what is sickle cell pain like? And I was having a crisis that I had already taken like almost 250 milligrams of tramadol, and within less than maybe like almost less than 12 hours, and I was still having the crisis. And then I started gasping. So I was remembered asthmatic. And then I was breathing. Later on, I got to a stage I was breathing in and out, breathing in and out. And I remember the medical school when we were in the maternity ward and the woman is in labor and the nurses are encouraging her when she's having the active labor. Madam, try and breathe in and out, breathe in and out. So those things started coming back to my mind. And that was how I was able to describe how the sickle cell pain is like.
Childbirth pains, yeah. Yeah, wow.
I have seen art that therapeutic. So one of the things, or one or two things I do now is, okay, when I'm having crisis, I discovered that I can write. So what it does to me is that it doesn't really remove the pain. It just blocks my mind from the pain.
Yeah.
The pain is still there, but my mind does not concentrate on it.
Yeah.
And so through that, I've been able to write some things that are inspiring to people.
Yes.
So it is now a new strategy that I adopt to be able to manage pain crisis whenever I'm having pain crisis.
So you'd encourage people to find something that they enjoy, that they can distract themselves from feeling the pain. And just in a lot of literature, I've also read that as well too. Thank you for the link. So anyone who wants to buy Dr. David's book, the link is in the chat group. It's a fantastic book. I 100% recommend this book. This helped save my life this year. This past year, you know, everything I was going through was like physical health. So this book, buy the book, please, everyone. And yeah, I just find that I've started writing myself again. I used to journal since I was a child. I've always written. I used to be very good at creative writing, and just through this past year, I've been trying to kind of recall things from my diaries. But actually, I invested in, if you can't write but you're a writer, buy a digital recorder and have that to hand where you can relay and recall experiences as well. That's what I've found helps me to remember things. I've bought a digital recorder and at least I can keep things to hand, because my diaries are now empty. I've got maybe one-liners in my diaries because I've been limited physically. So I'm trying to adopt other ways to, you know, to keep being creative, keep inspiring, and being, you know, being used by God, but also physically being able to still manage and do things. So yeah, everybody listening, just find what makes you, you know, the thing that makes you tick, really, the thing that gives you joy and helps to distract you. Definitely, I advise that too. I'm just having a quick, I know you mentioned as a medical doctor, you never really experienced people with the trait in your medical profession having such pains. When you joined the group, what were your first thoughts about when you joined? What did you feel when you joined? Were you aware that maybe you'd come across people, or what were your thoughts when you joined? How did you think it was gonna be like in this particular group, sickle cell trait support and information? What were your expectations?
Okay, when I discussed with you and you told me a sickle cell trait, it was like a new experience. I'm hearing about a new experience. So I wanted to hear more from sickle cell traits and let me see how we could share information and help one another. Because all through my lifetime, I've never heard that sickle cell traits do help this. So now that I'm hearing, how can we help people with sickle cell traits? So it means there are many people that have been experiencing it with sickle cell trait and the world has not been listening to them.
Yeah.
I think it's time we should make the world listen to them. And so that's
Yeah.
why in my book,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I could say just thank God. Even before I met you,
Mm-hmm.
I purposefully, by God's guiding, sure that when I defined sickle cell disorder, I also included people with sickle cell trait.
Yeah.
So that
Definitely.
whatever therapy, not even knowing that people with sickle cell trait also do experience some of those crises. So whatever
Mm-hmm.
kind of audience the book is going to create, people with sickle cell
Mm-hmm.
trait are not excluded.
Yes.
So that's why
Yeah.
I use the word sickle cell disorder. So
Yeah.
everybody, even those who have sickle cell with thalassemia, we
Mm-hmm.
cannot leave them out. We have to
Yeah.
come together as one and get the attention we need so
Yeah.
that we can receive
Definitely.
better care and then more
Mm-hmm.
research can be done to
Yeah.
help us understand this better.
Yes. Definitely. Thank you. That's that's it's amazing. I mean, from a medical perspective, hearing you speak, and to enable us. I mean, from the beginning when we started having like discussions, but then we were planning, I was wondering how to do this, how to proceed with this, and then just having you as backup and having just knowing that there's a medical doctor on my side. It was just a fuel that actually, a medical doctor who knows my experiences, who has felt my pain because we shared the same kind of pains and similar experiences. That I think was the biggest step for me. And it was like, okay, I can't let this go. And again, the stubborn nature that God has given me, that God has given us as sickle cell warriors, across the whole spectrum. I think that took over, and it was like, okay, just because they say I can't, just because they're saying this, because even the pain medication, they gave me things that just didn't touch the pain. The first time I received any pain relief that helped me was just after having this stroke in the hospital. The first time I've ever had, in fact, I've had morphine before in the hospital many years ago, once, but this was actually the first time being in hospital, being heard, them seeing the pain, because I was literally just holding my head and going just literally just, it was so painful, and rocking, my body was rocking on the bed backwards and forwards, where I couldn't lay down. It felt like my head was going to explode. The pressure behind my left eye was so intense, and the pain inside just the left side of my head, and then the limb weakness, and where my arms would get completely, both arms had experienced weakness and numbness and tingling, but the right arm was tingling and feeling like almost like, the only words I can describe it is like a python's constricting. When you see a boa constrictor constricting its prey, that's what I was feeling, like something. You can actually see the muscles twitching and turning and constricting when you watch a snake on a animal channel. My mom loves the animal channel, so I've watched those many times. Even though she hates watching snakes do that, devouring prey, but that's how it felt like in my arm. And even to this day, I'm still having, the pain in my arms, where my arms are going, especially the right side where it's constricting, and it feels like it's being squeezed. Everything is being squeezed, and it goes rock solid. um, so just knowing that pain and having your voice as a medical doctor, and just knowing that, okay, because of this pain, I'm even more stubborn, even more resilient, even more pushy to be heard. And that was the first time in hospital, I had a morphine injection via a drip, and that, as soon as I had that, that was the first time that I had any sort of pain relief. It was temporary. It lasted, I think, maybe 20 minutes, and then I was back to this severe pain, and I was being ignored every time, because the nurses would tell me, no, 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 it's not relevant. I created a sickle cell care plan, and I took that with me to the hospital. Nobody told me to do it. The doctors didn't tell me to do it. A nurse who actually has sickle cell trait herself, she was a friend of a friend who I spoke to, and she said, okay, it's possible that, as the trait you can suffer. She said she never personally experienced any problems. And from her saying that, she said, what you need is a care plan. You need to be under a hematologist and have a care plan. And, this is what should be in it. And she guided me on how to write my own care plan. So I did. I have an A4 liver arch folder that I record everything. Things that help me, remedies that help me, and just have on the front of it that I'm sickle cell trait, but I'm symptomatic. So at least people know that if anything happens to me, and I've got my folder, you know, there's information there for them straight away to access. But yeah, that's the only time I had pain relief, which actually helped me and worked. So yeah, it's just going back to the creativity. Despite the pain, the creativity is, I think through that pain, it's using it to push me into what my purpose is. Like yourself as well, you know, and just knowing that that pain has given me such purpose now, um, more so now than ever before, just because it was the worst that I've ever experienced. And looking back over the years of my diary entries, even that was very emotional for me, because I was looking back, things I'd blocked out of my mind. I remembered specific times, like the times I had complications, but I'd never really realized how deep they were until I looked back at Facebook posts and then posts in my diaries. And I was like, wow, my whole working life has been, my school life, my working life, my attendance record has been appalling because I've been very sickly. And just realizing now, the same pains I experienced there, the same descriptions are the same ones that I've just experienced and gone through now. So it's like, wow, just your book. I can't say thank you enough. Um, and just, yes, encourage people to do what they enjoy during the times of pain, crisis, you know, to just relax, to rest, um, and just do what your body tells you to do. Um, Listen to your body. I've learned to stop, because I used to push myself to the point of collapse. Um, Even I guess because I felt like I'm not normal, but nobody's listening, so it can't be true that, you know, it mustn't, it's not real. This isn't real. Um, I felt like that so many times. So yeah. Um, and finally, are there any tips that you can give to people, sickle cell warriors, taking care of your health to maintain a healthy work-life balance, and also advice in preventing or minimization of crisis where possible, as we know it's not always possible?
First, I will say it's very important you know God.
Mm-hmm,
He will guide you as to how to go about it.
mm-hmm,
Every person is unique and different from another. What
mm-hmm,
is unique and special about you
mm-hmm,
that helps you to be able to manage yourself better, God is going to
mm-hmm,
guide you about it.
mm-hmm,
Secondly, uh, identify the things that work for you.
mm-hmm,
Know how those things work for you and make it work for you.
mm-hmm,
You need to sit down and study. If I do it like this is how it
mm-hmm.
will work.
Yeah.
Now turn it into a methodology for your own life.
Mm-hmm,
See, even with sickle cell, among sickle cell warriors, there are differences in experiences.
mm-hmm,
Some don't have some crisis, some have. I never experienced stroke. So there are
mm-hmm,
differences in
mm-hmm.
crisis, differences in experience. So the main thing is you should be able to identify what works for you, even as regard the triggers of crisis,
Yeah.
and then how to manage crisis. All of those things, identify how it works for you. I mentioned about drinking enough fluid. I
Mm-hmm,
discovered that I don't like drinking much water, but
mm-hmm,
I still have the obligation to drink more fluid. So what I
yeah.
did is always mix water with juice,
Mm-hmm,
50% volume of water, 50% volume, and then mix both together. And that is what I encourages me to take fluid frequently. Because
mm-hmm,
before, take fluid frequently was difficult because
mm-hmm,
all I considered as fluid to intake is water. But I
mm-hmm.
realized that you can also take other forms of juice as long
Yeah.
as it helps you to meet the daily requirement. So I
Yeah.
understood how it works for me, the limitation for me in taking water, and then now I can overcome that limitation by mixing it with juice so I can
Mm-hmm,
help me to comply with my daily
mm-hmm.
intake.
For the flavor, yeah, definitely. I hear you. Um, I wanted to ask, while you were talking about the splenomegaly, I don't know if I said that correctly. Just before we sign off, can
Yes.
you have an enlarged spleen from a medical perspective without it showing up? You know, like the crisis pains that many of us experience, and then where the stomach just swells, because I know that that's common with sickle cell anemia. For myself, it's always been the case. Where my stomach swells, and it's almost like when the dactylitis, the hand and foot syndrome starts, where it feels like the nerve endings are on fire. The only way I can describe it is like they're inside out and they're just facing upwards and raw, and just briefly touching my skin really gently, it hurts. I scream. Can you have splenomegaly, and can it reduce as well after you've gone through a crisis? Can it go back to normal?
Okay, it's not only sickle cell disorder that can cause splenomegaly, other medical conditions. Now, you may not notice it if it is not too enlarged and there is no pain.
Okay.
But once there is pain, you will notice that you are feeling uncomfortable with that in that region. So you will know you may not even know that it's splenomegaly, except it extends beyond the the ribs, and then you see that one is extended and is distended. That's when you may notice it. And so, now depends on how the process goes on in the body, because there are still some things that medical science have not been able to tentatively say this is how it happens. But the point is, once the process, the way it occurs is, once there is crisis, the spleen is mopping up the sickled red blood cells from this blood circulation, it gets enlarged, and then it results to a crisis, or it can result to a crisis. So if the mopping up stops, definitely the spleen doesn't need to get enlarged again. So the best way to handle the splenomegaly problem is you need to go to the hospital and see a doctor.
Okay.
Because there are some tests they will do, some tests they will do to help you nature. When they do ultrasound, they will know the nature of the enlargement, and then they will also help you know whether sickle cell disorder is the only cause, or there are other causes for the enlarged spleen. Because if you don't understand the other causes and then you are taking care of sickle cell, it will not go. So the best thing is, it's better to see a doctor, let them run some tests, and then be able to identify what is causing it and then manage it appropriately.
Okay, I might ask for that test. I mean, my stomach has gone back down. It seems like it's reduced, but because it seems to happen every time I go into severe episodes of crisis, it seems to always be included when my stomach it gets so swollen and so painful to touch, and my ribs, and it spreads to parts of my spine, not my whole spine, and then my arms and my legs as well. So yeah. Okay. I think on that note, I'll say thank you so much before we cut off, and just say thank you so much, Brother David. I'm so honored that we've been able to communicate today, and that you've joined me, and thank you for the amazing presentation that you did. I'm truly grateful, and thank you for the information, for sharing your experiences as well with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank God as well.
Amen. Thank God. I'm grateful to the Lord for your life, and yes, we'll continue to thank you, and we'll continue to battle this, to fight this battle together, as Global Voices United, despite where we're based, all of us are united globally by this one purpose and one cause, and I believe it's gonna touch lives and help save lives. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody watching. Thank you for your patience with me with using Facebook and going live for the second time after yesterday practicing. So thank you to everybody, and we'll catch up soon, and stay blessed and stay well and stay hydrated, my brother, and we'll speak soon. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.